Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Claire Markwick, and this is Real Life Business. Hello and welcome to episode number 14 of the Real Life Business podcast, the show where we talk about the real life stuff that goes on behind the scenes of running a business to unlock the keys to a sustainable, profitable operation that meets the needs of our lifestyle. Now, there's a quote that I love from the book E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, and it goes, "Great people create their lives actively while everyone else is created by their lives." Great people create their lives actively while everyone else is created by their lives. I love this because it reminds us that we have a choice. We can either react to whatever stuff life decides to throw our way and spend our time wishing, waiting, and hoping that things are going to change, or we can actively decide what it is that we want out of our life and steer every decision in that direction to make sure it happens. This week's guest is a great example of that philosophy. Annabel Gonifas is the founder of Dizzle Sky Kitchen Club membership and coaching, where she supports her clients to achieve their healthy cooking and eating goals. She fell in love with cooking in her teens and loved the idea of making it her career, but had no idea how to cook. Unperturbed by that small detail, she set about seeking opportunities, allowing her to develop her passion. So let's join the conversation now with Annabel sharing a bit more of her story and how it came to the creation of Dizzle Sky.
Thank you, Claire, and thank you so much for having me on your podcast today. I'm super excited about it. So, yes, my background is a bit of a funny one. I have been a professional chef for 20 years, and I'm now a coach. So I'm now a chef and a coach, or I like to say coach first and then chef. So I fell into cooking age kind of 18. My family had always been real foodies. We'd grown up in Belgium and the States and just always surrounded by fresh food. But I didn't know how to cook, hadn't got a clue how to cook. And I wanted to ski. So I wanted to go off and do ski seasons. And I thought, okay, I'll run like a chalet you have in Europe. You have these chalets where you go and cook. So that's what I had to go and do. So prior to that, I went and did a little cooking course. I didn't really turn up all the time. I was partying quite hard. And I think I learned how to kind of chop an onion, and that was about it. So then I went off to do my first ski season, age 18, and I was cooking for 12 people day in, day out, with one day off a week. And I didn't really know what I was doing, to be fair, the whole way through. But what I did know is I really loved the feeling afterwards. I loved the feeling of people sitting there satisfied by some kind of meal that I had created somehow, and I got paid for it. And I was like, this is really amazing. And at school, they'd always kind of said, you have to go and be a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher, or everything was quite kind of static, and that's what you were meant to go off and do. And I was like, wow, I can be creative. I'm naturally very creative and get paid for it. And I love food, and I want to learn more about this. And I love the ski season.
Win-win.
So I then went win-win. So then I went off back to university, did lots of cooking at uni, was constantly just I was one of those annoying people where I'd be like, okay, we're going to have, I don't know, 10 people around for dinner and let's make it 3 courses. Just one of those annoying people. Oh, just for fun, why not? And then I went back to do ski seasons, and I did that for 12 years. In various kind of roles, and I really wanted to find my way around the kitchen. And I knew I didn't want to go back to cooking or chefing school, but I knew I wasn't really that competent. And so it was kind of learning on the job, various places. And we also did a stint on a Scottish island, which was 8 miles long and 2 miles wide. And somehow I totally blagged the job of head chef up there. And I mean, totally blagged the job. Before that, I'd been cooking for like 20 people. And this was kind of up to 100 covers a night, dealing with local suppliers. And when the storms came in, I don't know if you can imagine it in Australia, but it's this tiny weeny island off the west coast of Scotland. And when the storms came in there, you couldn't get supplies. I was kind of running around the island, knocking on doors, going, can I have 5 onions? And going into people's veggie patches and stuff, and still having to produce food. So it's that real spontaneity and improvisation and learning on the job. And we had hotel guests as well there. So you had to change your menus all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So every day was a different menu. And it also really taught me, there was a guy kind of mentoring me there who's done work with the Ivy, again, a really kind of famous restaurant in the UK and other places. And he really taught me that a recipe, a menu doesn't have to have a title. So a plate of food doesn't have to have a title. It can just be an assemble of ingredients. So for instance, because we didn't always have food, we kind of had to make things up as we went, and I had to create these menus every day for the restaurant and the hotel guests. So for example, a salad, instead of being say beforehand, I would have thought, God, what kind of salad can I cook? I'll make a salad niçoise, or I'll make a Caesar salad, and it always had to have a title. And then after that, it was more like, well, I've got salad leaves, I've got beetroot, I've got goat's cheese, I've got walnut, and I can make a dressing. So suddenly you have a salad and it doesn't have to have a title. And I literally on the menu would just put a comma. So it would say salad leaves, comma, beetroot, comma, walnut, comma, goat's cheese, comma, and balsamic dressing. And that was allowed to be food. And I was like, this is revolutionary.
It's like a
it is an aha. So, and that's very much one of the things I teach my clients now, because often it's the fear factor that they have of the inspiration, the Groundhog Day of like, oh, I want to make a fish pie, I don't have all the ingredients. It's like, great, what have you got? They're like, well, I've got this and I've got that. I'm like, great, let's put it together and you have a meal you can cook for your family. So that was Colin's say, just really, like I say, learning on my feet. And then we went back to do more ski seasons, worked in different restaurants. But all the time, the best cooking I ever did was not the restaurant cooking. It was when I was working more for private families or in the chalet and really talking to people and actually just cooking, but finding out about them. And asking them questions and being able to welcome them into the chalet, give them a cup of tea. And they were always really anxious when they arrived and they had a stressful journey with all their family. And I don't know, there were avalanches and planes didn't take off. It was they always arrived.
Always a
really
story.
And stressful. Like always imagine when you go on holiday and it's kind of the planning before taking your family on holiday is so stressful, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then you finally get there and you're like, I'm trying to be relaxed, but I'm really not relaxed at all.
It's going to take me 2 weeks to unwind.
Yeah, exactly. I want to be there. I want to be in that headspace. So that I was really observed that. And then within about 3 days, people always relaxed. And so when I came back, when we stopped running, we had a chalet business over there in the end. And when I stopped running that business and we came back to the UK with our eldest son when he was 7 months old, I knew I wanted to get back into food, but I didn't want to miss that people element. It was the people, kind of what drives people. I find people fascinating. I find the whole way that they can be really stressed and that they can feel better, that whole mind reset. I find it fascinating. And I was working in travel sales when I first came back, and we had a small family. And one of the things we started doing in travel sales was working with something called Insights, which was all about clarity, and what was all about personality profiling. And I was suddenly so intrigued by this because we'd met so many people through the years. And I just observed, often we were doing in the chalet, we were doing lots of corporate guests. So I was also observing people kind of really at the top of their game and their different personalities and how they relaxed. And I think I was just being really nosy all the time, just pretending I was cooking. I had an open plan kitchen. So pretending I was cooking, but actually kind of, how are these people interacting? What are they doing? Why is he on his laptop? Why is he looking out the window? What is going on the whole time? Just observing. And then when we did this color profiling, I was like, my goodness, the world now makes sense.
Yeah.
And at the time, I'd started building Dizzle Sky, and it was around the message of healthy eating. And there's a huge obesity crisis in the UK. I think it's pretty global. I'm sure it's in Australia as well, but I know that you're quite leading in getting on top of your game over there with it. But it's a problem, and at the moment it's not getting better, it's getting worse. So I really started researching this, and how, why. I kept on asking the question, why is this happening? Why are we still eating processed food so much? What is the barrier? And I went to this amazing conference at City Hall in London, where Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall, an English chef, was there, and there were loads of MPs there, and there was like head of agriculture for kind of England, Wales, Scotland and Ireland, and it was really big guys. I totally blagged my way in, and I was sitting there. There was this amazing panels all day of speakers, and I was thinking, these guys are going to have the answers so that I can then help people. And at the end of the day, it was called Veg Power, and it was run by the think tank Food Foundation, and they do amazing work. But at the end of the day, they didn't have the answers. And I was like, if these guys don't have the answers, then what is the answer? And I kind of thought, there's so much education. We know so much about fresh food. There are so many recipes around the world and have been for generations. Like, what's going on? Why are we not eating as well as we should? And I kind of got down to the fact that actually it's about people. It's not about the education about what we should eat. It's not about the cooking reality TV programs that are just all over the place that I can't face watching because it makes me really nervous. And also I hate the whole judgment thing. And it's not about, I don't know, we enjoy food. It's, it's in the media all the time. It's very confusing in the media, at least it is in the UK, what you should eat, what you shouldn't eat, what diets you can go on, it changes all the time. So what is the fundamental problem? And at the end of the day, I got down to the fact that it's people. We are all people. And so it must be some kind of habit, behavior that is not allowing us to, as well as our busy lifestyles, to eat as well as we can, or to not to go for that cooking from fresh option rather than just grabbing the convenience over processed or processed food.
That's a big thing, isn't it? I think the convenience factor. I know I'm guilty of it sometimes. It's like, just stick a couple of pies in the microwave, meal done, Meal done. And so it's got down to two things I think we want from food. And this is, I'd say, this is pretty general, but I'd say as humans, two things we want from food. We want it to be tasty. Yeah. And we want it to be effortless. Yeah. That's fair. Two things. Very fair. Yeah. Fair thing. And that's actually two parts of our kind of 4 laws of behavior change as well, is you want it to be satisfying, which is the tasty bit. And then you also want it to be easy, because that's the effortless bit. So we're kind of, if you can tick 2 of those boxes, it's going to help people drive their want to change. And so the coaching aspect, kind of going the whole way around, the coaching aspect is really helping people find it effortless. And I've since done a diploma in professional coaching and mentoring, and also now a Clarity 4D facilitator. So kind of working on people's personality types, which I've translated into cooking types, to basically work with people's strengths in the kitchen. Because there are so many different styles that people come to the kitchen with, and you've kind of, you've got your, or when you read a recipe, you're processing and gathering and processing information. You have your kitchen setup, you have your time constraints, you have your individual family setups, you have your dietary requirements. As we both know, you have your sports fixtures in the evening that the kids have to get to, yet we still have to feed our families. Yes. And so it's making it as effortless as possible. And that is, in a nutshell, what I do for people now. I think it's just fabulous. And even when you were talking about people's different cooking styles, it just made me just chuckle away to myself, because I think me and my husband are so different. Like when I cook, it's like a bomb has gone off. Like everything is everywhere. A recipe, I'd have recipes out, but I use them as a guide. I'm like, yeah, not feeling that, I'll put that in, or I don't have any of that, I'll put that in. And you're very, very intuitive, very like, just you know, go with the flow sort of thing. And it's a mess. Whereas Terry, when he cooks, everything is organized, everything is, you know, exactly. If there's a recipe, not an ingredient not there, he's like, we don't have any soy sauce. I'm like, what are we going to use instead? You know, I mean, I'm exaggerating. If he listens to this, I'm probably exaggerating, but that's how it appears to me. And it's spotless. Yeah, he washes up as he goes, and he's like, how hard is it just to wash a bowl or put it in the dishwasher as you go? And I'm like, I'm too busy being creative for that.
Absolutely.
Hilarious,
absolutely.
Isn't it? And all these different different styles, and you must see it amplified even more so.
Well, I think that you completely hit the nail on the head, that exactly, those two contrasting types in the kitchen. And if you were being really intuitive and you were like, you don't need soy sauce, and he's like, I need soy sauce. And he's like, Claire, can't you just wash up? He's like, I don't need to wash up. And then, you know, so there's an element of when especially couples come to the kitchen together, like that contrasting and just raising awareness of it. And also how you can then go, you know, going back to the colors, that we understand how you can dial up and down on kind of behavior. And so you're like, okay, maybe for this baking recipe, I can't be that intuitive, because when I do, the cakes just go flop and taste gross. Well, that's because baking is more of a science. So therefore we do have to be more like rigid. And the same with your husband can just learn that actually it doesn't matter about soy sauce. We can add different ingredients instead. And that's okay. You know, so it's just, and just giving people that information then makes them feel more confident that they act how they act like they do because of a reason, rather than always trying to be someone else. And I know cooking is fascinating. Sorry, go ahead.
No, all good. All I was going to say was I was going to pick up on something else that you said before. You kind of hinted on it and then sort of moved on about the allergies. When people have allergies in their households, you know, I think we're both gluten-free, and in our household we've got gluten-free, we've got lactose-free. Previously we were nut-free as well, but thankfully our youngest son outgrew that. We've got very, very sensitive child to colors and preservatives, and even natural things in foods. There's things like corn, certain cocos, you know, apples, grapes. Like there's some really interesting, some really challenging allergies that people have to deal with, isn't there? And that adds a whole other element to it, doesn't it? And you help people with that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're so right, because it's really hard. You know, I came at this as a professional chef to this whole motherhood thing, thinking, oh, my children will eat lamb and lentils and they're just going to be so brilliant and so healthful, and I can't wait. And actually, while they were still weaning and I could kind of throw spoons at them, they were great, and I was like, totally nailed this. And then as they got older and they started going to nursery and they just became a toddler, and they kind of had a mind and could suddenly speak for themselves and go, no, I don't eat this or whatever. And then my youngest two actually got cow's milk protein allergies as well. And then you're like, oh, this is really quite challenging. And, you know, working full-time as a mum for someone else at that time, and kind of getting home at 6 o'clock and having to produce these meals that I really wanted everyone to eat quite well as well. With that, you know, obviously we'd go for the convenience food every now and again, but I wanted on whole our diets to be fueling us with the good stuff. It suddenly got really tricky. And I think it is really tricky. It's hands down, it's tricky. And it's something we have to do as parents for our children. Well, we have to have thought about, anyway, 3 meals a day and snacks. And then also, it's not only just that time, that's the cooking time. You've also got to vaguely plan it, even if it's just in your head when you wake up in the morning, what am I going to cook at 4 o'clock? Because otherwise it gets to 4 o'clock and you're like, I don't know what to cook. And then it's also the shopping, and then you've got to make it taste nice, and then you've got to wash up. So it's like, we think of cooking as just a quick thing, but actually, if we go back to, this is a bit I love, but if we go back to kind of our primal selves, you know, cooking and working, feeding our families, gathering, that was one of the main elements. That's one of kind of Maslow's basic human needs, is feeding ourselves. And here in this day and age, it's just got to be such a quick fix. It's like quick, it's part of kind of running out the door and going to school. It's just quick. But actually it is that whole community element of sitting down at the table. It's a big thing.
It is.
It's a big thing.
It's funny how you say sit down at the table. We don't have family meals every single night of the week, in as much as we all sit down. And it seems to be, it's just evolved into certain meals we'll sit together, and certain other things that we cook, we just sit apart. You know, the boys sit in their lounge room, watch what they're watching on TV. Terry and I will watch what we're watching on TV. And tonight it was super basic. We just had sausages, mashed potato, and a heap of veggies, and that's normally a TV dinner. And I was like, no, let's all sit together. And both boys were like, but this is a sitting in our lounge room dinner. I'm like, no, we're all going to sit together tonight.
And how did it go?
They were. It was okay, actually. It wasn't too bad.
Changing up the behaviors. Yeah,
I know. I'm like, I'm going to be talking all things cooking, and you know, wholesome families. Like, we're all going to sit together tonight.
But you know what? It doesn't always work, and you know, that's half of the pressures. And I do it myself. You know, I'm like, this is what I teach. Therefore, we all need to sit down and have a beautiful family meal, and all the chat's going to be incredible. It doesn't happen, because we're bringing 5 different individuals to the table. At the end of the day, everyone's had their own stresses, and it doesn't always happen. And also to know that that's okay and that's normal too. And it's just quite dimensional. It's quite multi-dimensional, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And I don't think we necessarily think of cooking and feeding the family like that, but there's lots of moving parts to it.
100%. I'm really curious, because your kids now must be back at school after that COVID hit the UK big time worse than it hit Australia. That's terrible grammar, but it hit the UK a lot worse than it hit Australia. And we had our boys home for, I think it was only like half a term, if that. It was a few weeks, really, because we had the Easter holidays in the mix as well. And it was it was long enough, but it wasn't so long. You know, we still sort of had that honeymoon period. I wasn't quite over it. You guys, on the other hand, had it very different though, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. And it was, I think we obviously had the first lockdown, which was last March. And it was hot and sunny here this time last year. And so I think it was okay. It was terrifying, but it was novel, and it was a first time round. Whereas I think lots of people in the UK really struggled this time. We went through the December holidays, the Christmas holidays, and then it was announced the day that people had gone back to school, or we were actually going to go back the next day, that schools were shut. And they weren't really going to open for the foreseeable futures. So we'd already had 2 or 3 weeks off with the kids over Christmas, which was great. And then we knew what to expect this time round. And although lots of the teaching had moved online, I think it was the loneliness of parents, that lots of people I've spoken to said it was the loneliness this time. We were going through it in the depths of winter. So it was dark by 4 o'clock. It was freezing cold. You couldn't meet anyone. You couldn't even meet anyone outside at one point. And if you did, well, you just had to go outside with your kids in the rain. And it was always raining and windy and cold. And you couldn't, there's no let up, obviously, when all the restaurants and the cafes and everything are shut. So from a food perspective, I'll come from this. There was no let up. So it was relentless. It was you and your family and providing all the time. And then there was also adverts on the radio and the government guidelines of don't go shopping, try and go shopping on your own, which is totally fair enough, but actually quite hard when you both work, you're homeschooling. My kids are 4, 5 and 8, or they were 3, 5 and 8. And, you know, I try not to take them to the supermarket all the time because it's a nightmare, but it's also quite convenient to kind of separate them and be like, okay, who wants to come to the shops with me? And one of them will always think it's a real treat. So there was just no separation. There was, you know, for me, all 5 of us all the time together. And I think it was hardcore for parents because, yeah, it was just a constant and the constant. They were all at home for 3 months, and then they went back for 3 weeks, and then we had the Easter holidays. But the 3, however long it was at home when we were doing homeschooling, just what can I have for snack? What's for snack? What's for lunch? What's for snack? What's for afternoon snack? What's for dinner? What's for breakfast? And so in between kind of doing these online lessons, and making sure that you were up to date with Google Classroom and printing off all the information and making sure they were actually sitting at their desk, you know, you'd have kind of half an hour to produce this lunch from this food that you really couldn't get to the shops and go and shop. And there was online shopping, but that was really reserved for people who couldn't get to the shops. So yeah, it was hardcore. And that's just from a food perspective, but it was it wasn't very fun. I'm glad we're through it.
I can't imagine, like, just hearing you describe that sounds like a full-time job in itself, let alone then to be trying to keep a business ticking over at the same time. That just, you must have just been pulling your hair out at times.
Yeah, I was, but you know what, I felt I was one of the lucky ones because it was my own business, and so I didn't have anyone else's agenda to work to. Whereas there are plenty of people who were, you know, really trying to put down their full-time job and homeschool and do all that food element as well. So actually, I kind of counted myself quite lucky that I had the flexibility, and I just pulled back on the business and I just did my skeleton work. Actually, it was interesting. I launched my new website on Christmas Eve, 24th of December, like, talk about a deadline. So I managed to do that, and I was going to go back in January, and I had so much to do, and I couldn't wait to kind of, I'd got it launched, but there was still loads I wanted to add to it.
Yeah.
And then lockdown happened, and it was last week when I found 20 videos that I'd recorded that I'd just forgotten about. And all this content that I'd spent hours recording back in like October, November, had just been put on hold and then forgotten about. So when I went to the website and I was like, God, that page is really empty. Why is the page so empty? It was like this little door that opened in my brain that went, what happened to all that content? And then I found it. And then I found all these plans for all this other stuff that I want to do. And it was like a door had to get shut in my brain and just went, you know what, just hold back on all of that. Focus on the kids. You just gotta do that. Just hold off what you're doing. Mode. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and I think I certainly look at it in as much as I say, you guys had it a lot worse than we did here, but it has taught us that we can get through challenging times, hasn't it? It has taught us that all those things that we have on our to-do list to do, and we've got all this stress and this anxiety and this pressure on our shoulders to get them done, actually might not be that important. And it kind of gave us permission to sort of just let go of a lot of stuff, didn't it, and focus on what was really important.
Yeah, I'd definitely say that. And it had its, you know, it had its definite cons. It was pretty horrendous, but at the same time, I maybe feel, I don't know if I feel less stressed now. My to-do list has got much longer. I feel pulled in maybe more directions because there's, you know, people, I don't know. Yeah, you're totally right. During lockdown, you can kind of shake away all the stuff that's not vital and not important, and I think it's easier to prioritize. Whereas suddenly we're back much more with things starting to open up, and the priority list, you know, I do struggle with prioritizing things because I'm like, oh, I need to do that, I need to do that, I need to do that, I need to do that. And then overwhelm comes quite quickly. And I think what's interesting is talking to people this year. I think we're all hitting, I'm going to say all people I have spoken to, so they're generally working mums, are hitting that overwhelm level quite quickly. And I think it's maybe to do with, we've all got this subconscious build up of anxiety and fear and just not niceness. So it's been building over a year. So instead of just kind of recharging our batteries and we've got loads of credit, we're all slightly in debit. And so as soon as extra pressures are putting on, it's like, oh, peak anxiety, peak overwhelm, peak fear. Whereas I don't know about you, but I definitely don't normally hit these levels as quickly. So I think it will take us longer than we think to kind of just get all that out.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And I am noticing the same over here too. And it's conversations that I've been having with a lot of clients recently as well. Like there is, whether we can sort of actively say, you know, yes, I'm really anxious about this situation, I'm feeling really overwhelmed or whatever, whether we consciously say that, we've got conscious awareness of the impact everything is having on us or not, it is irrelevant. It is having an impact on us, isn't it? And there's
Yes.
all this stuff going on in the world, especially over here, issues with China, what's going to happen to Australia and all this sort of thing. And we're absorbing all this uncertainty and all this unknown. And I talk a lot about creating our own certainty to sort of bring our scale back into balance. I kind of talk about it as a scale. And at the moment, sort of globally, humanity is under so much uncertainty, and so it's really important that we bring our sort of certainty scale back up. And it's funny you talked about planning what you're going to cook for dinner, because that's one of the little things that we do in our household to bring a bit of certainty back in. And we meal plan our entire week at the start of the week, so we don't have that extra layer, so that extra thing at the end of the day to go, oh my god, now what am I going to cook for dinner? We don't have that extra element into it as well.
And you're so right, it's kind of just those tiny little things of what can you control, what can't you control. Well, if we can control what we not control, I don't mean it like that, but we can think, we can have pre-thought about what we're eating. Like you say, it's just one less thing to have to spiral at the end of the day when everyone's hangry.
Totally.
And it's just one of those little things that you can kind of raise awareness of, however you want to put it. It's just pre-thought, and that helps. It just helps.
Absolutely. So what are some of the things that you do? What are some of your non-negotiable things that you put into your day to help you manage 3 kids, a partner, business, life?
So there's 2 things, because I can never come up with one thing, but there are 2 things. So the first is morning exercises. So this is something I started about 3 years ago, and I love not necessarily sport, but I love being outdoors and I love doing stuff and working my body, whether it's going for a walk or a run or whatever. And I did find that the more kids I had, the less freedom I had to be able to just go, I'm good, just going off to the gym. And it really impacted on how I felt. And so I started just doing some exercises, and pre-doing this, I would have thought, what? Doing exercises at 6:20 in the morning? No way. But actually, I think it just started with trying to do kind of 2 press-ups. That was it. And then it grew into a bit more of a routine. It's a bit yoga-ish, it's a bit Pilates-ish, and it's just a bit of stretching and strengthening. And I also struggled a lot in pregnancy with my sciatic. And I still do. If I'm in the garden for too long, or if I'm in the kitchen for too long, I still struggle with it. So I know for me that my core is really important, and that will give me more longevity. So it's really important. So I started this little routine, and it still only goes for about 7 minutes every morning, but I do it at a time. The reason I do it then is because I've just got out the shower. I'm in my underwear. I don't get changed. So it kind of takes away one friction element of, if I was to do it later at night, I'd be like, oh, well, then I have to get my yoga mat out, and then I have to do this. And I just constantly putting up barriers. So I've kind of created this non-negotiable habit of mine, where I just do it in the morning before I get dressed. And even on the weekend, if we happen in a past life to have been out for a boozy night or something, even if I've got a hangover, I'm like, do your exercises, because it's somehow as well, I feel like it awakens my gut to doing core exercises, and it kind of gets me ready for the day. And if I don't do it, I just feel quite sluggish. So for me, it really helps my mind and body kind of connect and be like, right, we're not just a mind going crazy, there's a body there as well. So let's all wake up together. And it's just really quick, and it's really easy. And I just notice like within myself, it's been the biggest change I've had, having done sport all my life and being like, I have to lose weight, I have to do this, I have to do that. I just don't worry about it anymore, because I'm like, well, I do my exercises and they help a bit. And if I get to go for a run, then that's great. But it's just now not something I have to worry about. Yeah. It's just done.
I cannot, like, the whole way through, like, we're not publishing the video, but the whole way through I'm like, yeah, because I'm exactly the same. I'm a home workout like junkie, and if it's just on my Insta, I post videos all the time, or post pictures all the time. Mad Fit is the YouTube channel, and it's this girl, like young girl in America somewhere, and she does these home workouts. And the reason I found her, and it made me chuckle when you said you do it in your underwear, because the reason that I found her was because I was YouTubing pajama workouts, because I put the barriers up too. I'm like, I've got to get in I've got to find my sports bra, I've got to find my shoes, I've got to find my shoes, you know, like, and I've got to get changed. I don't do it. So all of these workouts, I'm in my PJs, not, you know, bare feet on my yoga mat, and then I'll go have a shower afterwards, and then I do the whole school lunches, breakfast, that kind of thing. But exactly the same. It's not full on hardcore. Sometimes, like, she does a lot of song workouts, so some of them are only 2 or 3 minutes long, and sometimes that's all I'll do, but it's enough just to kickstart me. So 100% agree.
Totally. That's amazing. I love it. And it's just those barriers otherwise you put up, and then you find out you don't do it, and then it's another thing on your to-do list that you have to do, and then you don't do it, so then you feel like you're failing, and then you feel guilty. And it's so, you know, our brains are funny things, but all the emotions then attach. Whereas if you're like, I'm just going to get up and do it, then you just do it. So my other non-negotiables are, it's funny, when you first asked me this, I was like, oh, it's a cup of tea in the morning. But then it's not just a cup of tea in the morning. It's actually turned into I realized it's a hot drink at certain aspects of the day. And it always has to be when I'm on my own. So I now get up early, like at 5:30, which again, I never would have done, just to have a cup of tea in bed in peace and quiet. And now it's summertime in the UK, you can hear the birds and it's light. So it's definitely harder in winter to do this because there's nothing to look at. So I open the blinds, I have a cup of tea in bed, and no one can talk to me, and I can just be. And that is just amazing, because otherwise I'd find I'd be doing breakfast. All I want is my cup of tea. And everyone's like, can I have scrambled egg? Can I have poached egg? Can I have fruit? Can I have this? Can I have another piece of toast? Can I have this? And I realize we're about to leave the house and I haven't had my cup of tea yet, or my cup of tea has gone cold, which I hate. So if I have it in bed at 5:30 before anyone else has woken up, I'm like, oh, there we go. And then I've also created a funny one. So my coffee that I used to come back to after the school run, I'd have it. But then by the time I'd made it, I kind of feel like it's 9:30 instead of 9 o'clock, and I'd already wasted half an hour. So now I take a flask with me on the way to school, and I have it on the way back. So it's a hot coffee, and I don't listen to the radio. I might listen to a podcast, and I just drink it as I drive. Yeah. And then the final one is do you have pucker over in Australia? Pucker cheese?
No. Oh, maybe.
No, you have pucker pies. I know that,
yeah.
But no, this is pucker.
I recognize it. I don't know if I recognize it from the UK or whether I recognize it because they've got it here. I don't know.
Okay, so it's a really nice kind of brand of herbal teas. It's really nice. And so I'll have a nighttime pucker before going to sleep every night, and again do the same as I do in the morning. Just don't read my book or anything, just sit there, often falling asleep while I'm drinking it, but just have that kind of 10 minutes, just whether I reflect on the day. Sometimes I do, sometimes I just let my brain wander, but it's a real non-negotiable. And it sounds awful, it sounds very middle-aged, but I'd much rather that than a glass of wine these days. Because, well, no, I lie. Friday and Saturday nights, I definitely want a glass of wine. But it's just such a routine and part of my structure now that it's a non-negotiable. I would not go to bed without it. It's definitely a comfort thing.
It's funny, isn't it? And I liken this to what we were talking about before. It's comfort, security, control. It's a different word for the same thing, isn't it? It's those little things that we have got control of that bring us stability, that sort of help ground us, and then that helps us ride those ups and downs of life and motherhood and business, doesn't it?
Definitely. And I'd say mainly, with the children, luckily they're too young and they'll never listen to this, I hope. Sorry, guys. But, you cannot control these beasts. They are children and they create chaos, mine do anyway. And they're wild and they have fun and they're spirited, but there's no control. And I've realized that more and more as I kind of get older as a mum with them and they get older. There's no control. They have their own brains and they're doing what they do and they're on their own mission. And it's definitely within the chaos it's my little kind of safety net and then the chaos can kind of happen. No, it
you're
can.
better able to deal with it.
Yeah, 100%.
What is it that keeps you going through all that chaos? What's your big drive?
So my big kind of drive, where I regroup and where I get my energy from is definitely nature. So I love walking in nature. I did a stint in London for 9 months and I was like, oh, cannot do that. So we've lived in the mountains, as I said, for 12 years. And now we're based down in Devon, in South Devon, on the coast at the bottom of England. And we're 10 minutes away from the beach and there's cliff walks and there's forest walks and there's the Dartmoor, which is kind of beautiful hills. So just getting out into nature, and that is really, I need it. And it's really, I find it fascinating. Why do I need it? Well, I need it because it can be peaceful and calm and you can just kind of walk and it really clears the chatter from my head. There's a lot of internal chatter that goes on. And so it clears that. And I love it on a really windy day when the wind is so noisy and blustery that I can't hear what's in my mind and the wind takes over. But then I also love it on a night when the sun is beautiful and the moon's coming up and you're just like in total awe. And you kind of feel like there's a much bigger universe out there and that your tiny little crazy brain isn't actually that important. And let's look at the big picture. We are insignificant. And that is really, really nice to kind of know. I like that.
It is.
Some people might find that terrifying, but I love it.
It's quite a profound thing, isn't it? But we are like our being is so insignificant in the grand scheme of things, and I think that could be a whole other podcast conversation in itself.
But it really helps. You kind of, I'll go out for a walk and I'm like, I think I need a walk. My husband just goes, why don't you go for a walk? And I'm like, yes, okay, are you sure? Is that okay? Like, I feel guilty, blah blah. He's like, go. So I'm like, okay, go. So I take the dog and I go for a walk and I come back and I'm like, everything's fine now. Hi, everyone. Hi, I'm a much nicer person. Who can I read a story to? And it just helps. Yeah, it helps.
Oh, I love it. I'm laughing so much of the stories you're telling because I'm like, oh my God, I hear you. Now, if people want to find out more about what you do, how can they find you?
Yes, they can head over to my website, which is dizzlesky, dizzlesky.co.uk. And there's loads of information there. There's lots of videos you can watch and you can just find out more about what I do. Or if I'm busy on Instagram as well, which is dizzlesky, same way, dizzlesky kitchen coach. And they can head over there and follow me.
Fabulous. I'll put the links in the show notes too to make it
super
simple for everyone to find you. It has been such a fun conversation. I knew it was, so I was looking forward to this one so much. Thanks, and I'm going to throw 5 more quick fire questions at you, if I may. I'm putting you on the spot here. I know this, but are you up for it?
I'm up for it. Always game. Born ready.
Love it. Well, we've heard a bit about your routine. I'm not sure if there's time for reading, but maybe there is. What are you reading at the moment?
So I'm actually reading a book called Us by David Nichols. So it's fiction. And I don't like reading fiction, which is really another struggle that I'm having, because I love it in order to just relax. But actually, the more and more I've been researching over the past few years, and then I've just done my diploma in professional coaching and mentoring, I just love researching and knowledge. So actually I cannot wait to finish this book. It's like, okay, but I find it a bit of a waste of time. And I've got another book on my reading list called Chatter, which is about the chatter in your brain. And it's written by a director of psychology in the US called Ethan someone. And it's all about giving you practical tips on how to listen to the chatter when it's good, and how to help quieten the chatter when it's not so helpful. So looking forward to reading that.
That could be that. I think I've got about 5 Audible credits because I'm not doing as much driving as I used to. So all my Audible credits are stacking up. So, but I might look for that one.
Yeah, have a look for that one.
Yeah. What about a song? What's a favorite song of all time and why?
So, favorite song of all time. This question really terrifies me, but I think the one that comes to mind is "This Is Me" from Greatest Showman. I think it's just about being unique. It's just about doing your thing. Every time I hear it, I definitely turn up the radio and sing along very badly. But yeah, I think it's such an important thing to just acknowledge that whoever you are, it's fantastic, and it's just a real anthem, isn't it? To just say, "This is me." Yeah.
One of the courses that I went on as part of my coaching program that I did, my training, they handed out the lyrics to that song, and it was everyone had to stand up in a circle. They pumped it really loud, and it was one of those like,
wow,
get rid of your inhibitions. If you're not normally someone who'd sing in public, if you're not anything like that, just forget about it. Close your eyes. Imagine you're in a room by yourself and just sing the song. And it was like, I've got goosebumps now even thinking about it, because like I hate, like I'll happily like sing in the house, sing in the car, annoy the kids with my singing, but to sing, even like when we used to go to church as a kid and assembly at school, like I just never do that. But I'm like, oh, whatever, do it anyway. Yeah, I love. Yes,
was it amazing?
Totally feel the power of that song. Yeah,
really, that's so brilliant.
Very
I love
cool.
that.
What about, let's change things up a bit, what about a quote that's changed your life?
I have 2 quotes that have changed my life, and one of them is from an amazing book that I have read quite recently by James Clear, which is Atomic Habits. I don't know if you've read it. It's amazing. So his quote right on the front, which says, "Tiny changes, remarkable results." To me, that is the big one, and it's something I teach a lot with kitchen coaching, and it's also something I live my life by, like those tiny little exercises I do, 7 minutes, but actually they've had the most remarkable results. So for me, that's a real biggie. Don't go for those big goals. Just break it down into tiny micro habits and you'll see change. Yes. And then the other one is a bit like "This Is Me." It's "Be yourself, everyone else is taken" by Oscar Wilde. When I read that a few years ago, I was like, yeah, that makes so much sense. Just be yourself. Yeah. Let's do this. Let's be a kitchen coach. Let's do this. And I really, for my children, I really want them to know that just be yourself. Yeah. Everyone else is taken. Go for it.
That's awesome. Love it, love it, love it. What about, now we're going practical, what about some tech or an app or software that's changed how you do business?
Yes. So I use Trello. I don't know if you have Trello over there. Yep. So I use Trello for kind of my get stuff down. I'm a real paper person as well. I make paper lists of to-do lists, but when it comes to like recipe writing, everything goes up on Trello. So I launch these recipes every month for the kitchen club, and as I'm in the kitchen, I can put everything up on Trello. I can put the photo up. It's so instant. It saves it, and then I can copy it onto my website later from the desktop. And it's also just a great place of storing just so many things, and it feels like I'm getting stuff done. So I love Trello.
There have been lots of votes for Trello when I've asked that question. It's interesting.
I love that. Good. Good.
Leave us, finally, you've left us with so much insight and laughter, but leave us with a life hack.
This could be a funny one too. So my life hack, I just love it. It's called a Crumple Zone. And someone said, but that sounds like a car crash, but it's totally not a car crash. It gets rid of the car crash. So a Crumple Zone is something I create one at the start of my day and at the end, if I can, of my working day. So beforehand, I used to kind of come back from the school run at 9 o'clock, think, okay, I've got to hang the washing, I've got to make dinner, prep it for later, I've got to do the shopping, I've got to do my work, I've got to do my emails, I've got to do everything. And instantly I just felt quite all over the place. And so with a crumple zone, I try and have one between 9 and 10 in the morning. Doesn't always happen then, but basically anything can happen. So if a phone friends, I've got a friend phones, I've got some in Australia and New Zealand. If they phone at that time in the morning, that's okay, because it's part of the crumple zone. If I have to hang a wash outside, that's okay, because it's part of the crumple zone. If I have to go to the shops, or I have to, I don't know, do some kind of life admin, house admin, like we're painting our living room at the moment. If I have to order paint, that's okay, because it's in the crumple zone. So anything can happen in this one zone. And then for the rest of the day, I really just crack on with my work until 3 o'clock, when I try and do one then as well, but that often gets eaten up. But yeah, the crumple zone just allows for a bit of my own chaos, I guess, or just allows me to get on with other stuff. And I know it's not for everyone, because when I was working for someone else, obviously you can't just say, excuse me, my day starts at 10 because 9 o'clock is my crumple
I'm in a crumple zone right now.
Don't go near me. You can't crumple my zone. But what it did mean is I would try not to schedule meetings until 10 o'clock. So it give me time to do the school run, to potentially, if I got stuck behind the tractor, be a minute late for work, although I try not to make myself a cup of coffee, to sit down, to answer emails, and then meetings and stuff would start. Whereas if everything was pressurized for 9 o'clock start, then you're on the back foot. So Absolutely. That's my life hack, is a crumple zone.
That is fantastic. I love that one. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
It has been so much fun. I really, really appreciate your time. Thank you. And as we said, I'll put all the links to how people can find you in the show notes to this episode, so everybody listening can jump on and find out more about the Kitchen Coach and everything that you do.
Oh, Claire, thank you so much for having me. It's been amazing. It's flown by, and it's just been a real pleasure. So thank you.
Now, I don't know about you, but I just love the energy and the passion that shines through Annabel. Her story highlights the evolutionary journey we all go on as entrepreneurs, and shows the importance of seeking out opportunities to help us grow into the person we need to be, even if we don't feel like we're ready just yet. Running a home-based business with 3 young kids is a challenge in itself, let alone being in lockdown thanks to a global pandemic. And rather than react negatively in a woe is me way, she decided to focus on being grateful for being her own boss and being able to choose to wind things back and be a mum first. The other thing that really stood out for me from this conversation is the importance of self-awareness. Annabel recognizes the need to add structure to her day. She's learned how to limit her distractions and knows where she needs to stay organized and energized in her business. Something that I resonate personally with myself. Now, I met Annabel through a global community of Clarity 4D practitioners, which is a behavioural profiling tool. Now, Annabel mentioned that she uses it to determine our cooking type, which then helps her to structure her coaching in a way that's going to really meet the needs of the person that she is coaching, to her client. And I use it in much the same way to determine what kind of business owner we are. You know, when we know what drives us, what limits us, how we operate, we can put strategies in place and make decisions to help us work or cook more effectively. And when we're more effective, everything is so much easier. So if you're curious to explore this a little more for yourself, to discover your drivers or your limiters to moving your business forward, then send me a message on either Facebook or Instagram, or you can email me at claire@reignitepc.com.au and I'll fill you in on everything you need to know. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to this show on the podcast app that you're listening to it on right now, and find us on Facebook or Instagram to follow along on the conversation between each episode. Share, I would love as well for you to share this episode or share the idea of this podcast with someone in your network who you think needs to hear it. I started this show to normalize the fact that we all go through shit. We all have stuff that goes on, and God, don't I know that right now. My life is a constant emotional roller coaster at the moment. We all have that stuff. It doesn't mean that we're going to be any less successful or that we're any more capable of running a business. So please, if there are people in your network that you think need to hear this message, then share. I am blown away by the growing number of listeners to this show, and it's now being listened to in 5 countries across the globe, and that is purely from people like you spreading the word. So I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much. The real life business movement is set to grow in the coming months. And so if there's anything that you'd love to hear more of, see more of, learn about, be sure to let me know on social media, or as I said before, send me an email to claire@reignitepc.com.au, and I will do my best to build it into what I'm brewing up inside. Alrighty then, that is all from me for now. I will be back in your ears really soon. And until then, bye-bye.